Welcome everybody to our Supply Chain Sustainability School Lunch and Learn. I'm Shaun Mc Carthy. I chair the board of the Supply Chain School. I also run the infrastructure group and various other programs within the school. But my job today is actually to keep very quiet, so you can hear a lot from Raj from Cadent Gas. He'll tell you his story about how he's got to where he's got to today in managing his supply chain, sustainable supply chain, using ISO 2400, using the Supply Chain School performance tool, various different things that we can do to actually leverage sustainability performance from our supply chain. So, Raj, welcome, and thanks very much for agreeing to join this session. Where this started was you told us that you'd got a really highly commended feedback in an ISO 14001 audit how well Cadent Gas is managing its supply chain sustainably. That's kind of the end of the story, but obviously we need to start at the beginning and try to understand for our audience and for learning what you've done and what we can learn and how we can adapt or adopt some of your best practice. So if we can start by basically, if you just introduce yourself, who you are and what you do, and then tell us a little bit about Cadent Gas. What do you do as an organisation, and what's driving your organisation to procure sustainably?
Of course, yes. So, Shaun, thank you very much for having me on. You and I go back a fair way into the past. Yeah, a little bit about Cadent Gas first. So Cadent are the country's largest gas distribution network. We don't make gas and we don't sell gas. So if the prices are going up, not being gov, it's not our fault. However, what we do is transport gas. We are responsible for circa 82,500 miles of pipeline. That's about 131,000 kilometers for those who think in metric. Most of that pipe is underground for obvious safety reasons. And what the pipe work does is it takes the gas from wherever it comes into the country from, or from wherever it's manufactured, down to people's homes and businesses. So in a nutshell, that is what Cadent is about. We get our work and our funding via Ofgem from the government. And the other interesting fact about Cadent is we are responsible for the National Gas Emergency Service. So we handle circa 1.4 million calls every year. And that covers all the other gas distribution networks patches as well in the country, including spots of Ireland. We bring gas to circa 11 million homes and businesses throughout the Northwest, the West Midlands, the East Midlands, South Yorkshire, East of England, and the North of London. And as our strapline goes, we are committed to keeping people warm while protecting the planet. So right there, right into the sort of vision and goal for the company itself, we have sustainability in the fabric of that. So that's Cadent in a nutshell. And myself, I joined Cadent a couple of years ago, and I was brought in with the express remit of delivering some of the promises and commitments that Cadent had made to Ofgem through its environmental action plan. So there was definitely a sustainability sort of agenda in my role and job title. I've since then progressed into other things at Cadent, but let's focus on the sustainability bit.
Okay, thanks, Raj. And I know from our previous conversations when you were looking for a kind of a framework, a strategic framework upon which you can hang your sustainability strategy, you looked at ISO 2400. Would you like to tell us about that?
So for those who are not familiar with it, ISO 2400 is a global standard that helps organizations assess themselves on where they are on the journey of sustainability. And through repeated assessments, every time you assess yourself, the standard points you towards betterment across all three legs of sustainability. I always think of sustainability as a three-legged stool. So you've got social sustainability, economic sustainability, and of course, the one that everybody goes to straight away, the environmental aspect of sustainability, the green side of sustainability. It's needless to say that environmental sustainability won't stand up on its own. The title of the standard is sustainable procurement, procuring sustainably. That's what it's all about. And like I explained earlier, it allows you to assess yourself and point you and give you ideas and actions. There's over 200 different angles that it looks at sustainable procurement from the standard itself. And under each of those angles, there is a start point, a sort of middle ground, and a best-in-class, going for gold kind of position that you can take for your company, depending on where you are. And it may be different for the different aspects of sustainability.
I guess 200 points sounds a bit daunting for some people. How did you kind of sort the wood from the trees and understand? I mean, obviously, I know ISO 2400 very well because I led the UK delegation in developing it. But it is a bit of a big read. It's like 50 pages, isn't it? How did you develop an action plan from actually what is quite a complex standard? It is designed for any size and type of business, but there's quite a lot in there. So how did you kind of narrow down your action plan?
So firstly, it's important to explain that it wasn't done single-handedly. There was a whole panel within Cadent who are responsible for looking at various aspects of the organization, who all chipped in at that point to try and understand the standard and to try and understand how we could apply it to Cadent. So multifunctional view, multifunctional perspective on the whole thing, and contributions from various members within the stakeholder community at Cadent. And then secondly, it's important to say that it's about what we are as an organization. Clearly, the standard, as you said, caters for all sizes and all kinds of organizations. So you could be a service organization, you could be a manufacturing organization. It depends on how you want to take which aspects of it. So we quickly kind of zeroed in on the aspects of that standard that are relevant for Cadent, that would help us not only present ourselves in the appropriate manner, but actually inform our action and our strategy. We are in the business of digging the ground. We have large numbers of contractors who go around, usually causing disruption and, traffic management systems in place. Most of those gas pipelines, which I mentioned earlier, run either under or parallel to typical sort of motorways and A roads and smaller roads. So it is inevitable that we cause disturbance. So we looked at it from every single angle. What does this mean for ourselves? What does it mean for our supply chain? What does it mean for the communities that we work in? And that helped us to get a more grounded view on adopting standard. We have been through 2 passes so far, and each time you put yourself through that assessment, it tells you where you are against your peers, against industry in general, and against the global, because it's a global standard. It allows you to benchmark yourself against global positioning, if you like, when it comes to sustainability in the supply chain and in procurement. Yeah, it has been. The more you do it, the more meaningful it becomes, the more tangible and practical the actions are that come out of it, and the more fun it is actually, So I would strongly advise people who haven't yet got into it, I would say give it a stab. The school supports the taking of the standard and adopting it, so reach out to the school and make a start.
Brilliant. Thanks, Raj. I think it's quite important at this point, and particularly for our audience, to recognise that ISO 2400 is a little different to some standards that people might be used to. So it's not like 9001 and 14001 in that they have very much a pass-fail audit associated with them. ISO 2400 is a guidance standard. So when you talk about assessing against the standard, are you using the self-assessment on ISO2400.org?
That's right, yes. So they have their own self-assessment tool, and that's the correct way to do it. But as soon as you do it, and if you go out and reach out for the standard off the internet as well, before you do your assessment, you can actually get into the zone and gear yourself up to be able to answer the questions correctly. You will have the information to hand, because it progresses through a very sort of logical chain of questions before you get from the start to the finish. So I would recommend that, you use the available resources provided by ISO themselves, but also reach out and actually get a copy of the standard, which is easily obtainable from the internet.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. ISO2400.org is something that my organisation, Action and Sustainability, sponsors as part of our social value. So it's a free-to-access site that's delivered through our not-for-profit business. So you can, of course, have an independent evaluation come in, but the self-assessment is a really good start. So you talked about the school and how do you As you say, you've kind of worked your way through the standard, you've done the policy and the prioritization and all of those things. And then it comes to the really difficult bit, which is actually engaging your suppliers. So would you like to talk us through your approach there? How are you contracting with your suppliers? How are you procuring them? How are you managing the relationships?
So one of the things that came out of the standard was the need for our own Cadent's own sustainable procurement standard. And on the basis of having gone through the assessments and understood what the standard is expecting from us, that then informed me in terms of writing Cadent's sustainable procurement standard. And what that does, what Cadent's standard does, is it is for our buyers. It's an internal document that is there for our buyers. We have a team of circa 30 plus people in procurement. Between them, they spend circa 1.2 billion pounds worth of Cadent's money every year with our supply chain. The supply chain itself is vast, as you can imagine, for a company this size and for the size of the patch that we cover. The interesting thing to note here, Shaun, is we keep things local as far as possible. That has two benefits. From a social sustainability perspective, that ticks the right boxes in terms of keeping business local rather than having huge, big corporations who are based in London or sometimes even abroad coming in and doing our work for us. Keeping it local keeps it down to the smaller businesses. So we have circa 1,700 suppliers. About 1,300 of them are active at any given time. We have contracts with about 500 of them. And these are round numbers, of course. And what the buyers do that I mentioned is periodically and following the cycle for contract launch, dwelling through the timeline of that contract, and then eventually the contract will come to an end, at which point it becomes necessary to re-tender. Again, let's not forget, when we go to market and do the tendering exercise, because we are a utility, it is under the auspices of the UCR, the Utilities Contract Regulation. So what the Sustainable Procurement Standard does is, first of all, it allows the buyers to assess the impact, the sustainability impact of what it is that they're procuring, be it goods, services, or a combination of the two. It allows them to assess what the sustainability impact is. And that, again, is done using four different pillars. So we look at the carbon impact, we look at the raw materials and resource impact, we look at the social sustainability impact, and then we look at economic sustainability as well. So it looks at it from various angles, the standard does, and informs the supplier on how seriously that particular tendering exercise needs to cater for sustainability. Once that is done, you have the classic stages of pre-qualification questionnaires, requests for proposals, bids coming back, tender coming back from the suppliers, and then a chain of evaluations that then leads to supplier selection, which then results in a contract. So this is classic procurement. I don't need to teach anybody to suck eggs on that. But at every stage of that classic procurement process, what the Sustainable Procurement Standard does that I've written, it gives our buyers the tools, the templates, the appropriate documents, the appropriate questions that need to be asked, evaluation criteria, how much weight should we give to sustainability on the balanced scorecard for that particular category of purchase. So all this is looked at in detail and prescribed almost and supported, that the buyers are supported in carrying out sustainable procurement. Again, feeding back into the ISO 2400 standard. So I think it is a really worthwhile piece of work to be done in any organization. You need to understand what the ISO standard is asking for. You need to understand where you are as a company when it comes to sustainability, and then enable your buyers to take all the right steps and ask the right questions, do the evaluations in the appropriate manner. We've even got model answers wherever possible, and it becomes easier and easier as we go along. Because the other thing we found is, in the beginning, when I wrote the standard, I was the only person deciding, what to do with a particular purchase, and I was the only person doing the evaluations. We soon realized that is not sustainable. So we have an increasing number of people at Cadent who understand sustainability in the supply chain and therefore are able to participate in that evaluation process and supplier selection process from a sustainability angle?
Yeah, thanks. So this is probably a question that's hard to answer because you've said that you obviously prioritize your sustainability demands and by impact, by the size of the impact. But often, and I'm kind of speaking on behalf of the audience here, because often when we get big clients in the room and they say, well, we use a balanced scorecard and we factor in sustainability, there's always somebody that says, yeah, boo, it's all about price. It's not really what you do. Can you give us some indication of what sort of weighting factors you apply to your sustainability criteria? So does it really make a difference, or is it just a token gesture?
No, absolutely not. So in the beginning, it was broad brush 5%, which was measly, really. It was quite a mean percentage, and it really spoke volumes about how important it was for us. But as time has passed, and as we become cleverer with it, that has grown to 15, 20%.
Yeah.
In some cases. And when the competition is tough and suppliers are really keen on getting our work, that 20% or even half of that, even 10% can make or break, a supplier's bid in terms of winning business. And so I think it is important, and you can't apply the same weight for all your categories. Different categories of purchasing, different markets, depending on the maturity of the market itself. You have to be able to dial that up or down necessarily, and that's what we've got better at doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message, and the standard obviously very strongly advocates prioritization by category and by impact, because not every supplier is impactful against all of your sustainability criteria, and certainly a one-size-fits-all solution definitely doesn't work. But 15 to 20%, yeah, that does make a difference. That's the difference between win and lose when prices are very similar.
If I may just add as well, because I mentioned 4 areas of sustainability when it comes to these questions and the procurement process. I talked about carbon footprint and emissions. I talked about resources. Where is the material coming from? Is it coming from the Congo? Is it a bit of copper? Is there conflict minerals and so on and so forth involved in it? Is the supply chain very long for that material? Is it coming from the other end of the world? So there are those 2 sort of implications, and then I talked about social sustainability. Is there a chance for modern slavery or any other kind of practices that are not desirable? And then finally, the economic sustainability, which I kind of referred to earlier when I said we keep things local. The more locally we buy, the more economically sustainable that supply chain is for us. So we dial, again, within each tendering exercise, we're able to dial those 4 areas up or down. There might be a category where the material doesn't make any difference at all, but the carbon footprint is still high because of logistics, for example. So it's being conscious of those things and becoming more mature as you go along.
And I think there's an important message as well in what you were saying earlier about not having one person, i.e. you, doing all the sustainability criteria, because that clearly doesn't work. So it's about actually sharing that knowledge with procurement people in your team. One of the things I've certainly found from my experience is procurement people are not experts in sustainability. They probably never will be. They're procurement people, and they need support in order. So there needs to be some knowledge sharing, but they also need support, and they need a source of knowledge and advice to understand when things do get difficult for them. So I guess it's useful then at this point in the discussion to talk about the supply chain school and how you see integrating your work with the school and how the school actually helps you to support your work in sustainable procurement.
Sure. So if I'm not mistaken, this is probably the 3rd or even 4th year that Cadent itself is a partner of the school. I remember the days when the total number of partners that you had, Shaun, was kind of 70 or 80. Tell me what it is now. Is it about 3 times that?
Yeah, well, we started the school 10 years ago with 7 partners. We're now very close to 200. I think it's something like 198 partners, depending on where we are with each partner on each day. So, yes, it's grown a lot, and we've got a real critical mass now. We've trained something like 23,000 people in the last 12 months. We have an objective to get to 50,000 annually. So it's getting bigger and bigger every day.
So, so Cadent are a partner at the school, and they will continue to be so. But along with that partnership comes the ability to take the resources that you have within your school, and that is a huge amount of resource, circa 3,000 and more bits and pieces of resource that you have in the form of your videos, your shorts, your e-learning modules, some of them very brief, some of them very detailed, resulting in a certificate at the end of it or some kind of a badge to show that you've done something with it. So what we do is every single contract of ours demands that our supplier signs up to the school. And as we all know, it is completely free of charge. So it shouldn't cost them anything. And therefore, the barrier to them joining the school is just somebody's time, an email address, and 2 minutes, really. And that's it. They join the school. But what we do is based on the impact of the category that is being covered by that contract, we would stipulate, and the size as well, and the size and scale of the organization, we would stipulate that the supplier goes through the sort of tiered progression that you've got set out in the school with your bronze, silver, and gold categories. So we would say that, if you haven't heard of the school yet, and if you haven't joined them yet, please join. And then we expect you to be a bronze member very soon by using some kind of resource from the school. And then you progress on to silver, and then you progress down to gold. And these kind of progressions are catered for during the quarterly or monthly review meetings that the buyers have with the suppliers. They will ask them, where are you with your gold, silver, bronze kind of status? And that is how we hope, by providing the resource in the first place, by stipulating that the suppliers use it at the contractual stage, and then through our contract management procedure, by encouraging the suppliers to get more and more mature with it, we hope to take our supply chain with us. Don't get me wrong, there are suppliers who are well in advance of Cadent. So, we're not always making resource available and encouraging people to go forward. Sometimes we have to follow the suppliers in what they're doing. Some of them are very good at what they do. They are partners at the school in their own right. And there are other organizations and there are other, resources available as well that people take and use. Some of them are very good at developing it themselves, and we learn from them. So I think that is a common thread that runs through all this talk about sustainability. There is no expert. There is no winner or loser. Ultimately, it's our planet. We all live on this earth. And what we do right or wrong here determines, how we leave it for ourselves, for our children, and future generations to come. So keeping that kind of perspective in mind, we constantly drive our suppliers forward to use the resources of the school and make progression through those channels.
Brilliant. Thanks, Raj. That's really useful and a very key message. And I know, I'll say we have nearly 200 partners in the school, and some have very different ways that they deal with their supply chains and their demands on the suppliers. But that's a very clear message. If you want to supply to Cadent, then you need to be in the school. And also through your supply relationship management programs, etc., the conversations you have with your suppliers, you're going to be looking at levels of activity. And just to clarify for the people listening, the gold, silver, bronze status is all about how much you're learning, is how active you are in the school. It's generated automatically. So you go onto the school, you go onto your dashboard, you do some learning, you attend a workshop, or you view an e-learning module or a video or whatever. The system recognizes that, and it will automatically update the company status, so you get a badge that you can download. You can put that in your tenders, etc. And then partners in the school obviously have access to that information as well, so it can be double checked in terms of what you're doing. So there's a lot of power within the technology that enables people like Raj and his colleagues to actually track what suppliers are learning, and really important that we do that. So great that you're doing that, because I think that's where as Cadent Gas, then you get value from the school, because you're helping to upskill your supply chain all the time. Do you use the resources of the school for your own people as well?
Yes, of course. Yes. So we periodically dive into the resources. As you know, you supply the governance behind the resource as a SCORM file, and you do that free of charge as well. So it's just a case of asking somebody at the school and saying, hey guys, well, we plan to put the socks up on modern slavery for our buyers and for some other key people at Cadent. We are going to make this learning mandatory for them. Can we have the backing data and information and the actual, the putting together of that resource. Can we have that, please, from you? And then you give it to us. We incorporate it into our skills and learning through our skills and learning department, and it pops up. And through, we call it success factors. I'm sure other people call it something else in their own organizations, but everybody at Cadent is expected to make progression and educate themselves and learn things as they go along. And these courses are mandated. So it's really easy, and there's no cost to it. Once you're a partner, getting hold of the SCORM file and putting it into your skills and development is no problem at all. I'd also like to take the opportunity at this point to talk about the CAG, the groups that we've got going, and yours truly, with your blessings. I'm a co-chair along with Emma Jane in the skills and learning part of your initiative there, to try and make sure that those resources that you are providing at the school are relevant, that they're current, and they are suitable for all kinds of businesses to take and use. So I'm actually actively involved in curating those resources and making them fit for purpose at the moment. I'm doing a similar thing with Utilities Against Slavery as well. They've got me going on their training sort of initiatives as well. So.
Yeah, I think, Raj, you were also involved in the learning pathways that we created for the utility sector. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so we have a subgroup within the school that is made up of utility peers like myself from the other water, gas and power network companies. And together we are working on actually making the school better for ourselves, for our supply chains and in general. So yeah, that's a really good thing that we kicked off, about 12 months ago. And I'm glad to say that our group, which focuses on skills and learning, like I said, is doing pretty well. We have a meeting tomorrow where we took sort of the top couple of hundred resources and divvied them up between all the members in that CAG group. And we're looking at assessing them and making sure that they are the right thing to have. I'd just also quickly like to say that a couple of years ago, I went on a crusade to get Cadent's suppliers to enroll with the school. And I'm pleased that my target at that point was to get up to 80% by spend value. We have now crossed the 90% mark by spend value.
Wow.
So 90% plus of Cadent's supply chain are members of the school. I'm not saying that they're all active and they're all, going for gold and really doing it. They're all at different stages, depending on where they are as an organization, how much time and resource they've got, what other things are on the plate. They are all making progress, though, and the ones that should be making progress and are probably not, your metrics that you flash back at us from the school allows us to see that, and we can target, we can focus on certain suppliers and say, come on, guys, the kind of work you do for Cadent is really carbon intensive, so you should do a bit more in that area. Go and take some carbon resources from the school and use them. So we're able to do that in quite a precise manner because of the reporting back that we get from you.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. I think that's an important message as well, that joining the school as a partner is great. We like lots of partners, but there is a lot of effort required to actually draw your supply chain into the learning, and that's where the benefits start to come through. So talking of benefits then, and some of the other issues that you're tackling, you've mentioned modern slavery, you've mentioned carbon, and of course, one of the things that you need to do once you've actually got your suppliers on board, and you've talked about the tender and the evaluation process, and then how you work with your suppliers. But ultimately, what you want to happen is you want your suppliers to perform better. Would you like to talk to us about that, about how you manage performance?
Exactly. So it's all fine and well, asking them to join the school and asking them to use the resources. But how do we know that it's actually making any difference? And the old adage, what gets measured gets improved. So it is important that we measure the carbon footprint of our supply chain, not just Cadent's carbon footprint. We need to be measuring the carbon footprint of the supply chain as well. And there are numerous ways to do it, of course. But as a branch of the school, you have the action sustainability side of your business that supports a very easy to use and very simple and neat solution. It's web-based. It's a web-based portal. It costs our suppliers nothing to register onto that portal. And then on a monthly basis, we have circa 55% of our suppliers by spend value actually going in there and reporting their carbon emissions. And we also use it for waste, by the way, because when we go out and dig the ground, there's lots of spoil coming out. There's also aggregate that gets formed by digging roads up and digging concrete up and so on. So recycling that aggregate, managing that waste, but more importantly, the carbon side of it, how much fuel oil are they burning? How much gas oil are they burning? How much electricity are they using? How many miles are they traveling? What kind of vehicles are they traveling in? What materials are they using? So all this, they're able to capture and report through the Action Sustainability solution that we've engineered. So it's a Cadent bespoke version of your Action Sustainability School. The bespoking was painless. It was not expensive either. So that's another thing that organizations who are serious about getting a grip on their supply chain's carbon footprint, they should be thinking along those lines and setting something up, because we've done it for 2 years now. And again, I think that is fairly industry leading in terms of, definitely within the GDNs, I'm sure, we are quite a way ahead in terms of getting grip on our supply chain's carbon footprint using your tool. Yeah, the way it works is all those materials, all that gas oil, all those miles that I've talked about, using DEFRA conversion factors, it is very, very easy to capture the data in very simple units of measure. So number of miles traveled. Any organization will have a fleet department that counts how many miles their vehicles are traveling. Amount of gas oil used, they'll have an invoice at the end of every month from their gas oil supplier. All they have to do is take the liters of gas oil or the number of miles traveled and throw it into the tool. And on the other side, out pops the carbon footprint based on calculations, based on the conversion factors coming from DEFRA. So it's quite precise. We're not just finger in the wind trying to guess what our supply chain's carbon footprint is. This really does it for us, and it helps the supply chain as well. And of course, let's not forget, if the same supplier is selling to half a dozen different customers like Cadent, he can take all his metrics, put it into the tool, and then apportion it so that, roughly by turnover. If you want to do it roughly, you can do it roughly. If you want to do it precisely, you can do it using the customized version that we've got. So you can apportion your carbon footprint, and then even that is better than not measuring it at all. So, yeah, I think that is what you were asking for when you were talking about performance.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. I think it's really important, and Cadent Gas was certainly one of the very early adopters of the tool. I think you were one of the first to start it. And clearly, the objective there is to get the supply chain thinking about reducing carbon. It's not just about collecting the data, but obviously the data becomes more and more important as organisations such as yourselves are looking at your Scope 3 emissions in particular. The carbon tool isn't the whole answer to Scope 3, because there's a lot of embodied carbon in materials and things that needs to be looked at, but it's certainly part of the answer. Yeah, go on, carry on.
Once you start measuring it and you get a rough feel for where the big numbers are, etc., you can easily set targets in the tool. So you can set upper and lower limits and ask the suppliers to go away and do something practically to get their numbers within those bands that we've specified in the tool. This is where it becomes really useful. And then you can start tightening up those bands, or increasing your expectation in terms of carbon reduction in a systematic manner. And you can even do it supplier by supplier. So, useful.
And then there's an obvious thing back to the sort of carbon learning that you can do within the school as well. So the two things go well together. So Raj, you talked about some of your other impacts. I mean, obviously, carbon is the one that everybody's talking about at this moment in time. But I know that as Cadent Gas, you worry a lot about some of the social impacts. Can you tell us a little more about your work in that area?
Yes. So I mentioned modern slavery. So again, what we have managed to do is have a really robust modern slavery statement that comes out every year. I contribute significantly to that, as do other people within the procurement function. And what we are able to do more recently is actually assess that in practice. So we've gone out and done a site audit, we've done a company audit, and we'll probably do more of those to try and understand. It's all very well having a really polished statement that sits on the government modern slavery register. That's one thing. But practically going out there and touching and feeling, the organizations that where modern slavery could exist. So that's another area. What we've also done in terms of economic sustainability, Shaun, is make sure that we're paying the national minimum living wage, etc. And we very strongly encourage our suppliers to do the same. We appreciate that it may not always be practical, but the aspiration needs to be there, and the dialogue around that needs to happen between Cadent and its supply chain, and it is happening. So, but those are another couple of examples, if you like, of taking social aspects of sustainability. And then let's not forget, of course, the EDI survey. So, or you call it FIR, fairness, inclusion, respect, equality, diversity, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yep.
That is a very big piece in today's world. And what we were able to do, again, with your help last year, is we ran a very, very detailed survey in our supply chain. So I sent out the invitations, the suppliers responded, you carried out the assessments. Ultimately, it all tied back to the Office of National Statistics, etc., and we were able to come out with a report. So actually, at 4:00 this afternoon, I'm sitting with our Director for Sustainability and Safety and Equality and everything else. I'm sitting down with them to talk about what that survey has told us, how we should then shape what we do in the coming year. We run on a 1st of April to end of March, so we're into a new year at the moment at Cadent. And in this year, we will take some of the things that came out of that survey and then turn it into practical action. So that's another example of social sustainability in action, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the diversity survey is getting bigger. I think we had something like 350,000 data entries in the last diversity survey, and that really does start to tell us not only where we are, but where some of the root causes maybe of lack of diversity in the supply chain lies. So once again, some good lessons learned, and good that you're doing that and you're following up on some of those issues. So tell us a little bit about. So when we got to, I sort of started at the end of this story about your ISO 14001 audit. And so when we look at ISO 14001 now, how demanding is that of you to actually do something with your supply chain? Because there's a new iteration of 14001 now is available. Can you tell us a little bit about what the auditors were looking for and why they thought you were so great?
This happened in February this year, where Cadent subjected itself to the auditors. It was a third-party audit, so it wasn't just us assessing ourselves. We called in professional third-party auditors to come in and look at Cadent to decide whether we can carry on having the ISO 14001 mark or not. The audit went well, by the way. And one of the aspects that they covered was obviously procurement and supply chain. So they spent a good half a day with me talking about what Cadent is doing in its supply chain to do with the environmental impacts. And again, because I was able to show them the resources at the school, show them the suppliers who joined the school and are taking advantage of some of the environmental offerings that you've got in your resource bank, because I was able to show them the sustainable procurement standard, which I talked about earlier, where our buyers, so they actually dug deep into it, and they wanted to see examples of a tender where environmental sustainability questions have been asked. They looked at the responses that have come back from the suppliers. They looked at the logic that the evaluators within Cadent had employed to mark those questions. And then they looked at the overall mark as well, the overall percentage, which we spoke about earlier. They looked at things like that. They looked at our suppliers code of conduct, which again ties in our suppliers code of conduct. We've actually mentioned the school and the carbon tool as well. So they looked at things like that. And it was all those things lining up, really. It wasn't one thing or another. There were many, many aspects to the questions that came from them and the kind of responses that we provided that ultimately resulted in them saying that, this was truly remarkable, and it was a strength, as they called it, a major strength for Cadent in the way that procurement function was tackling sustainability in the supply chain.
I think that's really interesting because, again, the way that 14,001 has moved on, what you've described, is actually quite a tough test. And these guys are looking in quite a lot of detail. And again, just for the benefit of our audience that are maybe looking at or using ISO 14,001, there is quite a demand now to address supply chain. And that's where the ISO 2400 standard fits in. So ISO 14,001 says you need to do something with your supply chain around sustainability in broad terms. And the ISO 2400 comes in and gives you some guidance on how to do it. So a couple of questions then from the audience, if I can, Raj. We've got a question in the Q&A, quite a simple one, I hope. How can we as a small groundwork company be on your supply list? Have you a framework in place? Are they regional, national? How can we get in on the framework? And Raj, you mentioned that, you like to buy local, you like to work with small businesses. So if there are small businesses out there that would like to supply you, what advice would you give them?
Unlike all the other previous employers that I've worked for, where we are private limited companies that can go to market and conduct procurement as they see fit. Because we are a utility, we are governed by the Utilities Contract Regulations, which I mentioned earlier, UCR. This requires, in the old world, it was OJU when we were part of the EU. We're not anymore. But we are governed in terms of how we go to market for anything, really. There are thresholds within the Utilities Contract Regulations that say if you cross a certain amount of spend under that contract, then it has to be conducted just so. It has to be conducted under the guidance and expectations of the UCR. By the way, that is changing as well due to recent events on the government procurement stage, if you like. That whole utilities contract regulation is changing. So to cut a long story short, my advice would be keep your eyes and ears open. Look at the journals where our work packages are published and put your hand up and say you would like to supply to us. And then you will become part of a tender. We use Achilles as well for going out to market. So that's another route. So it's a case of understanding how we go to market. We don't just launch a tender. It's not a case of knowing somebody and asking to join a tender. You have to formally apply through proper channels.
Okay, so that's through the government portal. So it used to be OJU, but it's the journal. That's where you would publish all of your contract requirements. And also, you mentioned Achilles, so getting qualified on the Achilles database as well is quite important. There's another question a little bit similar to that. How does ISO 14001 compare to construction line? We usually look at supply chains level with construction line, and there needs to be gold before we put them on our companies. So this is obviously a question from a purchaser. I guess you use Achilles rather than construction line. Is that correct?
We use both. So there are certain companies or certain types of businesses that we would like to engage with who are more Achilles sort of driven, and then there are others that are construction line. So we do both. ISO 14001 is completely different. If you ask me, that ISO standard that looks at environmental impacts and environmental management. But construction line and Achilles will kind of point in that direction in certain aspects. But we do use both.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess for me, as you say, if you look at, obviously ISO 14001 is the global standard for environmental management. I think what you will probably find is on most of these pre-qualification platforms, whichever one you use, whether it's Achilles, Construction Line, EcoVadis, Better, whatever, there will always be questions about your environmental management practices. And having been certified to ISO 14001 is kind of a short language for that. So if you're being asked about your environment practice, if you've got the ISO 14001 certificate, that answers a lot of questions. However, as Raj has described, ISO 14001 is a pretty tough test. The auditors will come in and ask you some very difficult questions. There is also a cost associated with it. So it's very much a choice for smaller businesses, whether it's something that you wish to certify against, or indeed just align your environmental management system to the standard. Either of those things can be done.
Yeah, and that's an important point you've made there, Shaun. We don't jump up and down and say everybody should have ISO 14001 because we understand how heavy it can be on the wallet as well as on resource and everything else. So what we say is 14001 or similar. depending on the category that we're purchasing, if there is a strong environmental impact from the manufacturing process at the supplier's end or the logistics side or whatever, if there's an environmental question there to be answered, then we say to them, you must have ISO 14001 or similar, or an equivalent system. And we appreciate that not everybody can jump onto ISO 14001.
Absolutely. As you say, there is a cost associated with that, and for smaller businesses, it's a little bit harder to access. So we're coming to the end of our session. Raj, from your point of view, anything to add that we haven't covered, and also how do you see the way forward? You've obviously done a lot as a business, and we're very proud as Supply Chain School to work with Cadent Gas because we really think you are one of those examples of best practice. But this is a continuous process. So where next for Cadent Gas?
Not only the processes that are not static, but the whole world of sustainability itself is significantly moving all the time. It's developing, there's new things coming out. So we're constantly on the horizon looking at what is coming around the corner. From a company perspective, we're very actively involved in hydrogen. And, I won't touch on that too much because it's a big, huge subject on its own. We all appreciate that natural gas and sort of, that sort of fossil fuel is not long-term sustainable, and therefore we need to look for other alternatives. So, yeah, we're active in a number of different areas. It goes back to ISO 2400, Shaun. If you keep reassessing yourself periodically, we have done it once every 2 years so far. We'll probably step that up to once every year. And you'll be amazed, like I said, because of the 200 different criteria that it looks at, you'll be amazed that every time you go back, there is something more you can do and something better you can do to make yourself more sustainable. So it's a constant journey. The number of senior stakeholders at Cadent who are really, really keen on this and understand it and live and breathe it on a day-to-day basis, that is where organizations need to get to, if you ask me. And a good example of that was the Cadent's first supply chain sustainability conference that we held in February. You guys made an appearance there, and your presence was really well appreciated. So yeah, it's things like that. We will carry on doing things. There'll be another interim conference, and then we'll do another one after that. And what these conferences do is they allow us to work with our suppliers to understand what innovations are there in the marketplace that we could all be sharing with each other. I mean, plastics is a classic one. If I may just very briefly touch on that. Single-use plastics is something that we've gone to war with. Okay, and we are one of the first companies to be able to properly baseline how much plastic there is coming into Cadent from our supply chain. It's a stupendous amount. We're looking at about 43, 45 tons of plastic that comes into Cadent. But we've been working with our suppliers to get rid of it or change it to recyclable plastic or change it to something else that doesn't go into landfill. That is our objective there. So it's things like that. There are numerous different projects. We have at least a dozen or so projects going on, well sponsored by the board, by our exec, and supported well throughout the business. And everybody's got it in their objectives to do something about sustainability. So, when it comes to your personal development reviews and end-of-year reviews and midterm reviews, there's always questions about sustainability for every single person at Cadent. So, yeah.
A couple of other questions for Raj. This is a good one. How would you suggest introducing best practice and sustainability in your team when you're not the decision maker? Raj, I guess in some aspects, obviously you are the decision maker, but in some aspects you're not. So what would your advice be to Freddie Hinckley?
I'm just an enabler. So my advice would be understand what your organization does, understand what the sustainability impacts are, and then go and engage with people at all levels, not just the top. Go and speak to the storekeeper, or go and speak to the cleaner. Speak to everybody in your organization and see how you can be an ambassador for getting people thinking sustainability. It has to run through the whole organization. It's not in one corner or the other. So that would be my advice. I walk around the building. I walk around the businesses. I go out to my sites. Make your presence felt. And start articulating, get that language and that sort of ethos make it commonplace. You need to start generating enough energy there around that, and I found that really helped.
You don't have to be the decision maker. I think that's the key message, and that is an example of a non-decision maker that helps to make it happen. Fantastic. Final question then from the audience, Raj. Please, can you send a link to the platform that you use for your PQQ, for your pre-qualification? Is that Achilles?
Yeah, in some cases it is, yes. Yeah, I can dig something out and make it available.
So here's another one. In an effort to try and improve sustainability across the whole supply chain, how best do you sell benefit to small limited companies? You mentioned you do a lot of work with SMEs, and obviously that's a slightly different sell and a different level of engagement. Any advice there for our questioner?
All I would say is, on the one hand, we've got the school, we've got Shaun and the whole of the sustainability school, which we're putting on a plate in front of our suppliers. Take it, use it, and benefit yourself and your organization. And what you'll find is, because you've done that, because Cadent is asking you to, all your other bids, all your other tenders, all your other customers will appreciate what you've done in that space. So it doesn't matter how small you are, it's not going to cost you anything to join the school and start taking advantage of those circa 3,000 resources that they have in there, all different levels as well. So, enjoy yourself with resources at the school, and the upshot of that will be more business for you, because people can see that you're serious about your sustainability.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Raj. I mean, the school has always been free. It always will be free. Certainly, all the time it's on my watch. I don't propose to change that. The only thing we ask people to invest is their time. Okay, so there's another question here that we really, really do need to close. Are you able to share your sustainability procurement standard that you use to qualify suppliers? I think you mentioned earlier that this is an internal document, but is there anything in the public domain so your suppliers are aware of what you're asking for?
I'm afraid, no, it's not in the public domain, but individually, if you're able to reach out, I could provide some guidance around the key criteria that we included in that standard, how we set about laying it out. It was a long journey. It took a good 6-8 months. Went round in circles a few times before we got there.
But it's a pleasure as always, Raj. Thank you very much for an entertaining hour. I do hope our audience have enjoyed it. Thanks very much, Raj, and thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.